Letters are really taking off. They're highly engaged, highly opted in folks who will reach your audience.
You're never going to get on the top tier podcast if you haven't done shitty podcasts. You're never going to get on the best stage if you haven't been on smaller stages. So you have to go do these small things in order to get the bigger things.
AI has actually proven to be kind of a boom for PR and comms generally, I think, because there's so much slop out there. These really heavy titles that people are paying a ton of money for: head of content, head of comms, head of, because they need a quality human being overseeing what the machines are putting out.
Welcome to Under Embargo, the podcast that says the quiet part out loud about PR, communications, and the chaos in between. Hosted by two of LinkedIn's most connected comms pros, Becca Chambers, a no-BS corporate comms exec with raging ADHD, and Parry Hedrick, founder of tech PR firm Crackle PR. This show brings it all. Real talk, sharp insights, and the kind of industry truths they don't put in press releases. No fluff, no filters, no f***s given. This is Under Embargo. Let's get into it.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Under Embargo podcast. I'm Parry Hedrick, founder of Crackle, and as always, I'm joined by the indefatigable Becca Chambers, who is CMO of Scale Ventures. Today, we have a pretty cool guest. I'm excited to meet in person, or I guess face-to-face, with Meredith Klein, who I have known, and she has been in my circle on LinkedIn for years and years and years, and we've been fangirling and fanboying with each other and cheering each other on through a bunch of different iterations. But Meredith comes from a really storied background. She was, she was director of public relations at Walmart, which is no small little entity. She later was head of consumer and product comms at Pinterest, another banging, ridiculous brand. And then very recently, she has started out on her own venture, which we're going to get into a little bit more. But Meredith The Media is a Substack that she writes, and she's also a contributor to publications like Inc. magazine. So there's just a lot going on there. So with that said, welcome, Meredith.
Thank you so much for having me. I respect and adore you both. So this is a real treat.
And you brought the hat. I love that is the brand. That's how I know you from not knowing you, but seeing you out there and very on brand. So can
let's just talk about the hat first, because we're talking about it now. What's the deal with the hat?
Let's talk about the hat first. So I wish it was a better story as a PR person, but basically a few years ago, I was speaking at a Reagan conference in Austin, Texas, and very basic. I was like, I have to have a cowboy hat to do that. Turns out I got a great profile picture, made it, a few years. And then in April 2025, after about 6 months of trying really hard to land a corporate job, I said, no more. I said, I'm going to launch a Substack. I've been talking about it on this platform. People are interested. I'm going to, throw it like spaghetti to the wall and see what sticks. So I took the profile picture with the hat, not thinking anything of it, uploaded it into ChatGPT, said, make an animated, image and call it Meredith The Media. Spits it out. I said, make her prettier.
Oh, come on.
Gives back some images, finally land on one. And then as I was doing the sub tabs, I kept using that same kind of hat image. Meredith in the media, media news, media moves, media happy hours, media collabs, just kind of came synonymous. And I honestly, at that point, still didn't think anything of it. And I went to a Forbes Power Women Summit, and I had 3 different people come up to me and say, are you Meredith from Meredith in the Media? And I was humbled, yeah, why? How'd you know? And they're like, the hat. I'm like, oh, right. Not me, the hat. So I was like, wait a second, this might be making, fetch stick, if you will. Then a few weeks later, I went to the Fast Company Innovation Festival. Same thing. People were coming up to me with the hat. And Brian Sazi, who's the executive editor at Yahoo Finance and a good friend of mine, texted me. He's like, the brown hat is becoming synonymous with Steve Jobs' black turtleneck and Bill Gates' glasses. And I'm like, oh my God, that's the recognition. Otherwise, I'm just another, PR girl that happens to have, blonde hair or brown hair or red hair. So it became a thing, and people were commenting the iconic outfit. And what I didn't realize was every time I was putting out a post, I was putting it out with that brand, the brown blazer, the hat, all of that. So it became a thing. And now at this point, I posted the other week without the hat, and I got a lot of comments. I didn't even know what you looked like without the hat. I'm like,
you look different. Did you get a haircut?
I better get an endorsement. I better get an endorsement from hers or something, because I'm going to have some serious hat head going on
Hey,
wearing it
Do
all
we
the
know
time.
what the brand of the hat is? Does the brand that makes the hat know that you wear it and you made it your thing?
You know, this is actually from Urban Outfitters. It's like something that I had just bought, like to be kind of like cool ranchero hat. I have since worked with a few actual cowboy hat makers, like the millinery, Carly Lamanna, who made me a custom cowboy hat that literally says Meredith in the Media, and she like steamed it and did whatever else. I'm up to about 7 hats now. So, you know, because I got to change it up.
Does part of you think like, God damn it, now I have to wear a hat everywhere I go, or are you embracing it?
A little bit of both. You know, that's why I have so many different, as long as I stay within the brown, black, cream, and like kind of leopard print, that's like within the brand of the image, I'm good. Getting a few different partnerships. I partnered with Shein, who gave me a whole bunch of brown and black dresses that I can wear, and having different conversations with brands just so that I can show up on brand, but not look like I'm in the complete, you know, same thing. I have had some agencies ask me if I'm coming in the outfit, and I will wear the traditional Calvin Klein, you know, brown jacket, which like my dry cleaner bill at this point, she's like, you wear this all the time? You have any other clothes? I'm like, yeah, it's hard to explain. But yeah, so a rotation of outfits, but trying to stay on the brand, create the brand. And I think it's really
totally
helping
helps.
in terms of just like the brand
As a brand
familiarity.
person,
Yeah.
I like have to scream about this because people always say like, you know, say we were having this conversation as a strategy a year ago, and I said to you, hey, you should wear the hat. And you're an executive at a company saying, how is that going to help us get any leads? And me describing a year from now end state is something that nobody seems to be able to comprehend, but like you just lived it, and you are a perfect example of why that matters, because it's not, your hat isn't additive to your intelligence. It's not making you a smarter person, but it is making you more recognizable and distinguished from a sea of sameness. And so that your ideas then can be the thing that stand out, because people are ready to listen to you because they remember and acknowledge who you are based on these brand signals. And I just needed to stop and say that, because it grinds my gears that people don't seem to understand this.
Spoken like a true CMO, and I take your advice on anything.
Thank
Hey,
you.
we have our thing. Becca is Becca from LinkedIn. I am the This Is the Way guy, and you are the hat gal. We're all crushing it in our own ways. But to the point you guys are both making, it makes us instantly recognizable. People read my post and they're like, oh, I know who that is because I see his little sign off. Like that 100% has separated me, as Becca says, from the sea of sameness out there.
And you are the fist guy now. Every time I use it, I like think of you.
Yeah, well, I have people constantly, like literally 5 times a day, somebody will write a post and like, and as Perry Hedrick says, this is the way, fist. Like,
at least they're giving you the credit and not trying to rip it, because we got a lot of a lot of people who are inspired by your posts yet rip it. It was funny. I did a post today with your friend Becca, Corporate Natalie, who I adore. She did this hilarious spoof on interviewing for Bad Bunny's Super Bowl, and she had like a headband with like the trees. And I actually did like a relatable post on, you know, interviewing in today's corporate world. And it's so true in terms of just, you know, the copying and whatever. And I was very clear, like original video by, you know, Corporate Natalie on TikTok, link to it, because like I know better than to kind of rip it. Now it was her video that I was showing with my context, but I gave the credit there, and that just doesn't happen.
It doesn't, again, like you can have ideas that piggyback off somebody else's ideas, and that doesn't take away from yours. And so I don't understand why people wouldn't give credit. You know what I mean? I mean, there is the copy paste plagiarist, which is a different story, but like, you know, you can still rip people's ideas and like put a little bit of your own original spin on it and not be called a plagiarist. And I don't see why.
Attribution, baby. It's easy.
Why in 2025 are people so lazy that they're copying and pasting people's content? Like, I cannot get over that. Like, you have tools at your disposal to hide your plagiarism at this point. Like, at least try a little bit.
Try.
So I want to talk a little bit about the pivot that you've made from being, you know, within a big, large corporate entity to now striking off on your own with Substack and the Meredith and the Media thing. And you got your hat and you got your whole jam going. Talk to me about how that's going. Talk to me about like what subscribers are looking like. Like, give me a sense for what the cadence of your everyday is like relative to the world that you used to live in.
Yeah. So Meredith in the Media is something that just felt supernatural. Obviously, I had done 20 years in PR, so my media Rolodex was pretty strong. I'm on text basis with a lot of the reporters. And with the state of journalism, I was like, we could really use a spotlight on journalists. And as great as it is, as comms folks being like, here's how you pitch, here's what you do. I'm like, what if we heard it directly from the journalist's mouth, right? Like, every comms person is great and has their own formula, and there's some tried and true practices, but I really wanted to shine a spotlight on what journalists were focused on, their careers, how to pitch them. I mean, I'm still doing some consulting with brands and like dying to get into some of these like major New York Times corner office type things that are coming back. And I'm like, let's pull the onion back on how actually that would work, but not from me having placed a few corner office columns, but like from Jordan directly, right? We're still working on her. But so I really started saying, understanding that I've been in PR for 20 years, I know the media landscape, but I want to help, PR folks better in the media landscape. I launched Meredith in the Media. Every Monday, I do a media interview with a leading journalist. I'm up to about 42 interviews since I launched in May 2025. I also, throughout the week, try to launch media roundups and media news roundups. So if there's media moves and people have new beats or new outlets, I like to cover that. I also like to cover the media news, like, when Fast Company comes out with a new podcast by design with Mark Wilson and Liz Stinson, I want to make sure folks are covering that. I adore Mark. He does great work, and it's an opportunity for PR folks. I also am trying to be, really innovative. I'm not the first and only person that's ever posted interviews with journalists. So I recently launched Live from the Newsroom, where I went to Business Insider for a full day with a videographer, sat in the 9:30 meeting, went through all the editorial meetings, got to sit with Jamie Heller, who's the editor-in-chief, who's been absolutely transformative there. And in the coming weeks, once I've had about 10 hours to sift through the content and pull it together, I'll be giving that behind the scene peek. And it's really meant to, answer the questions of what is happening in a newsroom. Are folks actually getting your pitches turning and being like, did you just get Becca's pitch too? My God, she's pitching everyone, right? Like, I want to know all that kind of stuff. And really an inside look. And then I also try to do spotlight. So it's a lot of work to do an interview. It's about 5 hours start to finish for a single interview. So I also try to do spotlights, whether it's Substacks or independent folks, and just ask them a few questions, drive some subscription for them. And the other thing would just be really focusing on new and interesting ways to bring PR folks insights that they're just not getting. I mean, 20 years ago, which is not so long ago, but I was going into newsrooms. I was making calls. Perry, like we did like the whole like call exchange. I 100% have been roasted on calls from producers when I called them at the wrong time, trying to get it in. I didn't know better, but that certainly shaped me. And I think, with the pandemic and folks working from home and remote work, which I think is great, there's a one side of it where you're not getting that shadowing expertise, where you're truly seeing how your boss, who's kind of been through it, is doing PR, and you're not going into the newsroom as much. People are scared of their own shadow. Nevertheless, they don't want, we had this conversation, Monica Earl from Duolingo did a post about, not finding contact information. Yeah. People are not including their phone numbers because they're terrified of getting that phone call. Yeah, I love it. And it's so true. And I have had so many opportunities and instances where I've had to call a reporter and talk them off the ledge of a bad story. And PR people now, I mean, it's not a monolith. I don't want to say all, but a little bit more scared too. So Meredith in the Media is really like, okay, I'm trying to hit folks across sector, across publication, to really be like, what's the best way to get on your radar? Tell me about the new columns. How do we pitch you? We don't have the relationship. Like, how do we get that relationship? And I've gotten a lot of great feedback on it really being transformative. So we're at 70,000 monthly views, over 3,500 subscribers, and we're just a baby, less than a year.
I have a question. I guess, you're doing all of this work that nobody's really doing anymore, to your point. Like, everything has changed over the past half a decade, let's say. What is different? Like, other than like the, interactions as far as, face to face, and how has, obviously the media landscape has changed a lot. How has that changed the role of the PR person based on what you're seeing and based on what journalists are saying? I guess that's my question.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I mean, I totally understand. There's a lot of the rise of
Right.
Substack. It's really more a resurgence. Like Substacks have been around for a very long time. Like Casey Newton, the platformer, super early on years ago. We're just seeing a resurgence of it because we're either seeing reporters getting forced into it through layoffs, like Jeffrey Fowler, very sadly got laid off at the Washington Post. Within the same breath of saying he got laid off, he announced a new Substack. Like it was an immediate switch to that. Joanna Stern, one of the legacy reporters for personal tech at Wall Street Journal, just announced she's going to be starting her own media company. To be determined if it's Beehive or something else. But super exciting nonetheless. So what's different is this need for PR folks to understand and be able to clearly articulate to their clients the importance of an integrated media mix. And I know that's not new either. Like I was trying to pitch, newsletters back in 2020, hey, we got any information? They're like, not on the website. I'm like, in the newsletter where people opt in and want to get this feedback, don't actually go to the information.weekend, but get it into their inbox, right? So it's not that it's new, it's that PR people need to step up to the plate and be able to say okay, podcasts and Substacks and newsletters are really taking off. They're highly engaged, highly opted in folks who will reach your audience, and it's a more action-oriented audience. I'd rather reach 3,000 people with the majority taking action on that than maybe get a CIRC or UVM of 2.78 million, 0.5678. I'm so tired of those numbers.
That's it though, right? You have to be in more places now, except for those places have people who are actually the people who want to engage with your stuff. So it's two sides of a coin, but to your point, that is far more effective to be speaking to a small group of people that care about what you're talking about than to a massive group of people who probably don't. So yeah.
Yeah. And I've got two reporters who told me this. So Kaya Yuriev, who used to be at The Information, now she's got her own, publication, Scalable. She said to me, the billion follower era is over. Folks are less concerned with massive amounts of followers, which is still important in some degree, but more concerned with where can they authentically relate to folks too, which is why you two have been so huge following, but so successful because you're so relatable. I'm I feel like we're speaking the same language. And then, I've had other reporters, and now I'm blanking out, but other reporters who have literally told me the dynamic shift is different, right? It's all about the audience. It's all about who you're reaching. It's all about the relatability to that. And the concept of content creator and influencer is blurring a little bit, right? So I think that's really
interesting too. And I talk about this a lot. Everybody is quick to point out that traditional media is kind of withering on the vine to some extent, which it is. There's layoffs everywhere. That is definitely a thing. But against that backdrop, there's been this sort of atomization of all these people where they've gone to these different locations, these different platforms, the Beehives, the Substacks, the podcasts. Yeah. So I'd argue there's actually probably more opportunity than there was in the past. It just takes a hell of a lot more individualization and targeting and authenticity when you're doing your outreach to get to those people to, in aggregate, build that halo effect for the brand you rep. So what does that mean? It means it's fucking hard. It means it takes a lot more work and a lot more time. And it's uncomfortable for the big giant agencies who maybe aren't used to that and are still trying to get paid by the hour to go out there and infiltrate these little pockets of influence. It's a difficult world.
But it doesn't mean, it doesn't mean you have to work harder. No, it just means you have to shift your strategy, right? It means stop doing some of the stuff that doesn't work anymore. And that's the problem, is we're in this transitional phase where everybody's adding Substacks and podcasts and all of these, non-traditional media as kind of extras to their comms plan, when really they should be focused on that. And the old media strategy should be the extra that they do when they have time, right?
Yeah. Yes. And that's the thing too. And so there's the maturation phase of PR folks that are for Substack or kind of, anti Substack, just complacent with their ways. It is major scales. People ask me all the time, how do I work with a Substack journalist? And I'm exactly the same way that you'd work with a legacy journalist. You take someone like Alex Conrad, who was at Forbes for 12 years and now has Upstarts Media. He breaks a story, breaks an embargo that. that news is out there, right? He still has the same background. He's still got the same, journalist integrity. He's still got the same audience and influence. He's just doing it on his platform. Alex Conrad, Upstarts Media, Jason Del Rey, The Isle, Alex Heath Sources, Rich DeMuro, the list goes on of folks who have come from massive legacy publications, who have the classical journalism training, who've got the ethics, who've got the following, now doing their own thing. So I even have some clients who are like, well, we'd still like to be in Forbes and Fortune. I'm like, okay, great. Right. But like, we're going to also get you in like the Sunday Setup, which is a great newsletter on leadership. And you should be in there. And the folks that read it are probably going to be interested in being part of what you've got going on. And I think, Becky, you were going to say something, but that's the difference. You've got to work smarter, but you've also got to be able to articulate that. PR folks have to be able to say to the client who's like, but I want Wall Street Journal. Hey, but actually you're going to get more traction by getting your content without.
As an in-house comms lady, which I know you were for many years, but I want to raise the pickle that I think most in-house comms people are in, which is that their leadership is saying, I want to be in the Wall Street Journal. I want to be in, Forbes. And the comms person knows, actually, you need to focus on these independent journalists, podcasts, newsletters, blah, blah, blah. But there is a massive disconnect, and a junior comms person or even a senior comms person doesn't always have the ability to convince said executive that the new media strategy is more important. So how do we arm the communications people with whatever it is they need to be able to convince their executives that they should be going on podcasts and they should be spending their time doing interviews that are going to end up in independent media rather than in...
One thing to add to that, it's not even just the executives, it's the board that the executives report to. Because ultimately that's who they're trying to impress.
Non-comms people. It's the people who don't have their finger on the pulse of this, who aren't, they themselves subscribe to newsletters and Substacks, but still somehow don't understand that that's where they need to reach their audience, So I don't know how we help with that mind shift, because that's a real problem.
It's a real problem. So the way that I used to, do this when newsletters first became a big thing, and they're like, we're not on Wall Street Journal. I'm like, but you're in the newsletter that gets emailed to everyone. I think one of the biggest things you'll remember as a junior person, whenever you're vetting something, it's like, who's already been on. So like-minded examples of executives that have been on, sample of coverage, tone of whatever else. I think one of the new metrics that I've started sharing with clients is shareability. So might have 3,500 subscribers, right? Might have 3 likes on it. Let's please stop measuring anything by number of likes. Look at the engagement, look at the impressions, but saves and shareability. When I was at Pinterest, saves was a huge metric because it meant saving it to take action on afterwards. That's the same for, I will bookmark a podcast and I'm like, I got to listen to this for later, right? So people should be looking at saves.
That's what LinkedIn is doing with its algo, by the way, saves and share, same thing, but go ahead.
Yeah, it's huge. So I think we should be looking at that. So if you look at some, I remember when Parisia Cavalans left CNN after 24 years being there, had worked with her for years, part of, restructuring being done. She launched Baggable, which is a shopping Substack. And I remember saying to clients, I'm going to pitch you for this Substack. It wasn't until I was like, look, she's interviewed PacSun CEO Brianna, and she's interviewing Elf Beauty. Elf Beauty is one who I would say is always impressed me with their level of media. They're always in Puck News and they're always doing whatever else. And unfortunately, what happens is those that are the trailblazers, are first to feast, if you will. And then once everyone else figures it out, it's the water's muddied. It's much harder. So I try to use those as examples. So the first thing I say is I look at the background. Parisia started Baggable, but she's got 24 years at CNN, interviewing major CEOs. She's also just done an interview with the CEO of PacSun. Yes, at the time, followers wasn't big, but imagine the folks that are opting into this, reading this. That's who you want to see your news, see the thing. Easier said than done. It's still a forever battle. I'm still chasing the tail of Wall Street Journal and traditional news after having gotten lots of, it's not even new media anymore. I can't even call it integrated media. But, Emma Hinchliffe at Fortune, who writes the MPW daily newsletter, and is a good friend, said to me, you are going to see traditional media looking at the independents, seeing how they can be more scrappy and innovative and creative. And you're going to see the independent folks looking to try to emulate what's in traditional media, which is so true, right? Like no doubt that I have my eye on what are different ways that I can bring a Cheddar style, vignette to Meredith in the Media, because right now I'm doing a lot of written text, right? Like, and there's things that inspire me in the newsroom that I want to be doing. From Legacy, they're trying to do more. You're seeing Fast Company and Inc. Forbes has had contributor model forever. You're going to see more and more of those lines blurred, where they're bringing folks of influence who they want to attract their audiences onto Legacy publications.
Can I ask you talk a lot about people that you've known forever, and you've been in this business for a while, and we all have. And, I have my friends. Sounds like you have a lot of friends in the media, obviously. What would you say to people that still think relationships are the most important thing about getting good placements, good articles, good newsletters? Is the relationship the thing, or is the story the thing, or is it both? Before you answer, I would just say my take has always been that relationships will get you a fair hearing because you've earned the right to have someone listen. But ultimately, it depends on the story, because your best friend is not going to just do you a solid because you know him or her. But I want to hear what you say, because you know a lot of really, really important folks in this industry.
Yeah. So I think relationships are important, but I would never, ever, 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 ever send a relationship a nothing burger and waste their time with it. So I do think the story is paramount. You've got to have a good story. You could not have a relationship and have a great story and make a relationship because you have a great story. That said, I also think it's easier to get some feedback. So I will reach out to folks that are friendlies and say, like, hey, I've got this story. Like, I think this could be great for, Chip Cutter. Like, what do you think? Who should I send it to? And they'll respond and be like, actually, this is better for Vanessa. Like, do you want me to introduce you? So I will use relationships to either say, like, hey, inbound, got an embargo coming in, check your inbox at 12, and like tip folks off, and they're more likely to respond to me, even if they're like, hey, this isn't a fit or whatever. But I will never send a media, especially a friendly, something that's an absolute nothing burger, because they're going to take, when I do have a story, less seriously. And I don't want to burn that. So I'm really big on, like, you have two clients, like your paying client at the moment, and the media, who hopefully will be your client forever, no matter where they go. So I'm really big on not burning those media relationships. I do think relationships are important. It's the reason why I just got a story. I had a great story that was perfect for TechCrunch, but I had never worked with the editor. Basically sent out a pigeon carrier, couldn't get in touch with her. I'm like, I don't know. Reached out, texted someone I worked with at Forbes. Hey, got a story right up your alley. Think it could be you. If not you, could be your colleague. Immediately connected me via email to the colleague, worked with them. We ended up getting a story. Same exact story, was totally relevant for TechCrunch, totally relevant for Forbes. That was an instance where having the relationship mattered, but it was a good story. Yeah. So it's like a hard, I see a lot of posts on LinkedIn, like hard against relationships or hard for relationships. You do have to have a good story no matter what, but the relationship will help a little.
Isn't it the same idea as like having a warm intro to like a job or like a job that's open? Like, they're not going to hire a shitty person just because their friend recommended them, but they might take the call, right? They might say, okay, I'll interview that person, or because I trust you, there is some trust put on whatever. But I think this idea that like journalists are just doing like favors for their friends and like posting trash, especially in this time when they already have 9,000 things they need to cover that they don't have time to cover. Like, they're going to just add your crappy favor into the mix is such a...
Well, and it's kind of funny. Like, a lot of people just don't know that everybody has access to lists of reporters. Like, anybody can get access to a database of reporters. You can pitch them. It's just you don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
Right? It's not like we're in the mafia. We call in these favors and like Nunzio is going to slip you a $50 bill to get that story. Like, it doesn't...
Hey, donate. I got something.
I also think
you want to sleep with the fishes.
This goes back to the like being in more places. Like, most of the media that I've been quoted in, almost all of it has been because a journalist has found me because of my content that is out in the ether, or my thoughts, or my thought leadership, or my podcast, or whatever. So it goes to the like flywheel of maybe doing this crappy podcast does have value, because 6 months from now, somebody from the Washington Post is going to watch it and be like, oh, she has a perspective on the thing I want to talk about. And I swear that is where I've gotten my best media coverage. Is almost all of the coverage that I've had, like personal coverage, is because people have found my thought leadership out in the internet world, LinkedIn, podcast, whatever. So it's not me pitching the media, it's them finding their sources because they're like, oh, this person has an interesting perspective that I want to include in my article or whatever. So I don't remember where I was going with that, but.
No, just the important. So I think you're right in terms of the importance of doing content. No matter if it's a big podcast or a small one, it's where you place and disseminate that content, which is, to your earlier point, meeting readers where they are in their content journey. So, for example, Andy Incenzio, who's been a reporter at the Associated Press for 24 years, actually told me that one of the ways she finds new sources is through LinkedIn comments. So she might work 6 months on a story for AP. She posted on LinkedIn, and a brand, a CEO might write, great story, but you didn't think about XYZ angle. And she's like, that's really interesting. I then reach out to them like, tell me more about XYZ angle. And all of a sudden she has a new source, a new story through LinkedIn where she published her work. Another example is clients are often asking me, we want to get on Guy Raz, how I built this. That's kind of like the mecca. Awesome. Super hard to get, right? If and when you do get Guy Raz, where are you posting it? You're posting it on LinkedIn. You're posting it on your Facebook, X, Instagram, whatever you're doing. So you're taking that content and then putting it on different channels to be found. How people find content is the key takeaway here. It's not that you got on Guy Raz. That's great. But where are they seeing it? I know when I post on Facebook, it's like all of my like aunts from, Florida and all over, my mom and dad's friends. It's usually kid pictures, but they're like, wow, Mary, are you a journalist? Is she a journalist, Cindy? Right? So it's like, you got to kind of manipulate it a little bit for the channels, but they wouldn't have seen my Guy Raz podcast if I didn't post it on Facebook, because they're not going to Guy Raz. Or if I'm posting on Instagram, that's where I'm like feeling myself a little bit. I got my best picture and I'm posting it for my friends who are like, slay girl, go after it, right? Like you're meeting folks at different, areas of where they're doing the content. So to the PR folks and the executives and the boards who are like, Wall Street Journal or bust, well, you're busting. You've busted, because actually if you're not going to get on that, you're not going to be found elsewhere. And then your content is just not on there. You might as well just post a corporate blog and call it a day.
Exactly. And there's two things I want to double down on with that. One, going on a shitty podcast where you still get video clips of you saying intelligent things is still very useful, usable content, right? Go make some clips and go share it in all of the places and go be out there. The second thing being, you're never going to get on the top tier podcast if you haven't done shitty podcasts. You're never going to get on the best stage if you haven't been on smaller stages. So you have to go do these small things in order to get the bigger things anyway. So look at it as practice. I don't know, but
and against that backdrop too is the LLM thing we keep talking about, Becca, which
and the LLMs.
The way that ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude, Gemini, they are using in their citations all these instances of earned media across podcasts and Substack and Reddit and you name it. And so in aggregate, the recency of those things is what elevates you to the answer section when people are looking for your stuff at the point of need. So your practice is actually very beneficial in real time to you being found and discovered for more opportunities.
There's also a whole brand, personal brand, executive brand, founder brand conversation in this, which is, if I Google Becca Chambers now, what comes up is a description of me that I have written about myself and put out into the world. So I have curated the Who is Becca Chambers response from LLMs because I've put enough of Who is Becca Chambers out into the world. If everyone just spent more time doing that as individuals, as brands, whatever, you can kind of create the story, the answer response that people are getting from LLMs in a much more packaged paragraph answer than it used to be with a bunch of random links, right? And I just think people are underestimating how important that is when someone says, who is Perry Hedrick? And it just says Perry is blah, 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 blah. And it's exactly the description you want it to be.
Well, I do that too, Becca. And I start with, often confused for Brad Pitt.
Yes.
Perry Hedrick is, and I just go deeper and
That's
deeper.
what I got when
into self-aggrandizing.
Yeah, I knew you looked familiar.
Or
Yeah, I was like, where
Ronald
did I see
Reagan.
that?
Yeah, I get Ronald Reagan quite a bit.
Oh man,
That's
wow.
true. Well, my hair's
Holy
a little
cow.
longer. I get
All
the
right.
Ronald Reagan thing. All right, I want to switch gears a little bit quickly. So two things I want to talk about. One is community, which I'll get to next. But the first thing I want to say is, I think you in some ways have flipped the model, Meredith, in the sense that the majority of folks travel from being a reporter, journalist, over into the dark side PR land. And you've kind of zigged when other people are zagging and become a little more of a sort of citizen journalist almost about the journalists, even though you still do PR and you still have brands. I'm wondering, do you attribute the success you're having to the fact that it's such an unusual thing that no one is doing that, or to some other thing, just like namely your love of inside baseball when it comes to the media? Like, what is doing the opposite of what most people do helping you stand out in this sea of sameness we always talk about?
I would say yes. I get a lot of pitches from comms folks wanting me to interview their CEO or executive. I'm like, hey, thanks for the pitch. Super interesting. Only interview media, Meredith and the Media, right? Like, and I'm true to sticking to that niche. You've got Axios, you've got PR Week, you've got PR News, you've got Provoke, you've got tons of comms communications. There's tons of amazing comms newsletters, great comms folks that have stuff that they're, putting out there, and that's important. And they're interviewing comms professionals and getting the take. And I there's a need for that, and it's interesting. But less and less folks are interviewing journalists. Again, I'm not the first and I'm not the last. Can't forget folks like Chris Roush, who launched Talking Biz News years and years ago. And it used to be the Bible for me when he'd come out with media, news. And I still keep in touch with him. And now he actually covers my news, which is surreal and interesting. He's a great guy. But it's really unique. And oftentimes reporters say to me, thank you for doing this. This is so fun. No one's ever wanted to interview me. No one's ever wanted to spotlight me. I'm always behind the pen, right? So I think journalists, first of all, they see the landscape and they understand how important their personal brand is. It's the reason Business Insider launched a follow button. They recognize we want people to follow the voice, follow the talent. It's also why you're seeing more multimedia where reporters like, I'm not going to work on the story for 9 months and then not shout it for the rooftop. Yeah. I'm going to have to figure out how to do the TikTok model. So me being able to say like, hey, I want to shine a spotlight on your work, on the new column, on the new format, like congrats, Wall Street Journal. You just hit 1 million followers on TikTok. I reached out to Julia. I'm like, it's actually really interesting. Let me know if you can get approval. Within 3 minutes, she's like, that was quick. They want you to cover it. Like there is this hunger to not only put a spotlight on the journalists, but on the work that they're doing. Because as much as like, there's an independent boom, journalism is so important, and we can't lose sight of the fact, like we can't have more Washington Post situations happen. We need Wall Street Journal. We need New York Times. We need these legacy folks and all the talented staff behind them. But we need to kind of bifurcate what's happening with kind of the integrated media mix. And what I'm trying to do is shine a spotlight on those reporters, their career, their hard work, what they're trying to do, as well as give the traditional folks like a chance to really succeed. So when the Fast Company does come out with a by design podcast, or Business Insider comes out with First Trade, which is their new, financial newsletter, I want folks to know about that because I want them to succeed. I want PR folks to succeed and get their clients coverage. And I want the publications to be rewarded for continually innovating and coming up with new and innovative ways to reach their audience. So I think why it's working really well, PR people benefit and are learning and getting coverage for their clients, and publications are getting a spotlight shown on the work and the journalists that are doing it.
I think it's more important now than ever also, by the way, like just given how fractured the media landscape is, how shit on the media are right now, how fast it's all changing all the time. Like you need people who are just focused on that. And so I think it's both admirable and timely that you're doing this, helpful for lots of folks. So very awesome.
So I want to kind of parlay what we're talking about here into a question about what's next for what you're doing. So I know you're a year young. You're still what are we in baby years? You're still you're only 12 months old. But
Yeah.
but is there a longer term play that you have in mind? In particular, I'm thinking you would be uniquely qualified to do what some folks have begun doing, which is to build a community around what you've done, like a subscription type model for comms pros, and maybe it's also a journalism thing where you have two sort of partitions and there's interplay between the two, and like maybe it becomes a lead sharing thing or a story pitching thing, or is that at all in your product roadmap? And if not, is it now?
Yeah. It definitely is more and more. It started out as just something where I was like, I love the media. I've got a lot of friends there. This would be really cool to do. It was born out of my own curiosity on what Substack was and how to work with it, and became really good. But now that I've grown again, 3,500 subscribers, 70,000, monthly views, and really journalists pitching me, hey, do you want to break my news? Or, we've got this new podcast. Like, do you want to be the one to scoop it? That's super cool. And that's been like my 360 moment where I'm like, I don't think I've realized like how big this has become so quickly. So I have thought about ways to monetize. I mean, it's largely free. I do have paid subscribers. So I've got about like 180 paid subscribers out of the lot. I've done the math and I'm like, wait a second, I could be making $1 million if I did paid. But I think it's kind of part and parcel. I'm in hyper growth mode. I need to give some of that content for free. Some of it will be behind a paywall. I want to always give the media interviews for free because I want to encourage the shareability. We talked about that being an important metric. I wouldn't paywall something and be like, hey, now share that with your family and friends. Like, I talked to Josh Schaefer at Barron's, and we talked about like you're writing for the fridge. And we talked about the importance of like, when you get a news article, your mom puts it on the fridge. Like, this is the same thing. People are still really excited to get coverage on them. They want to share it with others. So the media interviews will always be free. Auto paywalled after 3 weeks when the kind of everything sizzled down. And if PR folks are like, hey, I'm interested in that interview with Steve Bertoni for September, now you got to pay a whopping $9 to get access to it. But, I think the other thing I'm thinking too, as, more and more media are looking to integrate, for example, I'm on Inc. magazine and it links to Meredith in the Media. That's a huge get for both of us, right? And I will talk about it and cross post about it. And in terms of the next steps for that, I think maybe waiting to have the right conversations. Like, I don't want to be like, what's my exit strategy? I'm not that big of a deal. And I'm in PR. I still can't do math, but it's like, how do I figure out what, operationally this looks like? Because I would like this to be my full-time gig. I would love to exclusively focus on this and, have it be paid. I'm one person right now outside of hiring former Adweek editor, David Cohen, who's incredible and helps me with my editing and gives me that real journalism kind of overlay, which I think is really important. It's really only me, and it's a ton of work in addition to my day job. So I think until I can kind of free up some of that capital, or get an investor who's interested in me, or get some type of proposition where it's like, hey, you should think about like scaling this, and here's how you would do it. Right now, I'm riding this wave of one of the first folks to be doing something cool and unique. I'm having a ton of fun. It's bringing me joy and purpose. And I'm truly helping people. Like, the amount of emails and texts and DMs I get of like, honestly, this is awesome, Meredith. Like, it's transformative. I've landed so much coverage. That to me is so worth it. Now, that doesn't pay my bills or my kids', sports tuition. But for now, I'm just loving it. And I think good things come to those who wait. And right now I'm going to wait for kind of the next big moment while still spending the time doing the great work.
Love it. Fighting a good fight. And just for the record, I've seen you more since you've kind of ventured out on your own than I ever did prior. So you're doing something right. I see you all of the time, and it's great.
I've been called indefatigable about 6 times in the past few weeks. I'm like, I'd say so. Perry, you might have been one of the 6. I am very tired for what it's worth. And it is a lot. But I mean, I think that's another thing, and I think you can both agree on this. Perception is really important, right? So you've got to be, everywhere and appearing everywhere, and it can seem a little ick or cringe, or folks are like, oh my god, who should it? You got to keep doing it. Like, go unabashedly all in. For me, like, this is my job, right? Like, if T-Mobile is going to fly me out, which they did, and pay me money to, speak to their incredible comms team and make them even smarter than they already are, like, I got to be pumping that content out and posting about that, because now I want others to reach out to me and do the same. So advice for folks is just like, don't worry about what other people are thinking. Like, in your former life, when you're like, oh, I don't want to be posting this picture of my face or this or that, you've got to let all of that go. I have a, dare I say, stronger LinkedIn fan community of folks that I haven't really ever met in person than when I post on, Insta or Facebook, and I get a little bit of like that backhanded compliment of like, she's doing what? Like, you can't worry about that kind of stuff. You got to keep focused on what you're doing. And, Becca, to your earlier point, put it everywhere, because everywhere will then place you
also, like, is your goal to impress the people you went to high school with or your current coworkers, or is your goal to like open opportunities for yourself? Because if it's the latter, then like, sorry, they can call you cringe all day, but like, they can call you cringe all the way to the bank, or whatever that term is. Because
whatever that, right? No, it's so true. And again, like, this has become, what I hope to be a business, and it's going to go from what I hope would be just, a Substack newsletter to truly building, a media entity, a media empire.
So last question for me, and then we go do a little rapid round thing. I'm just really curious to hear what you're going to say about this. I get asked, we all get asked the same kind of question, like to talk to college classes and all that. I do it. I love it. And lately I have been thinking about the question of what would I tell somebody who said, should I or should I not get into public relations or communications? I'm not going to answer that question. I'm curious to see what you would say to a young college person thinking about getting into this space that we've been in for so long now. What would you say?
Yeah, I would say yes. I think that communications is the epicenter of every single business, no matter the industry. If it's gas and oil, financial service, healthcare, clear communication is paramount. And we've seen it when it's gone really awry and hasn't worked. And we've seen when it's worked really well. So I think the up and coming generation who, wasn't raised on newspapers and having inky hands, but rather is seeing everything through what we're calling new media, but for them is just media, podcast, Substack, social media. I think it's incredibly interesting for folks to get into. I think it's going to be even more important. I think the skill set, like my daughter is 9 years old and will still help me using, Cover Star, social media, this, that, the other. And I talk to her all the time about the importance of clear communications and being able to do it. Right now, we're working on really hard homework where she has to dissect thesis. I'm like, this is even hard for me. So I think that the communications role, I would still encourage it, because I think businesses are always going to need a communicator at the table to help them through the good, the bad, and the ugly. I think we've seen, obviously everyone saw the Katie Deaton, desperately seeking storytellers, and you've got Duolingo had like 425,000 for like a head of comms role, and we're like, oh my god, right? Like, it's incredibly lucrative, and people are paying more and bigger bucks to get good comms folks in here. Jobs are obviously harder, but I think that I would encourage folks to do it, whether they end up going in-house, agency, or on their own, because someone's always looking for someone. The amount of inbounds, like, hey, I'm looking for kind of a freelance publicist. The media engine will always be humming. It's just going to look different. And the tools that you bring to fix the car are going to look different. And this next generation has the advantage growing up as digital natives.
I think there's a value to being more of a generalist than a specialist these days as well, right? Like having a broader tool set rather than just going really super deep into like one niche, even within like comms. So anyway.
Just my quick addition to what you said, Meredith, is that a year or two ago, I might have been like, I don't know if it makes sense to get in now because the media ecosystem is shrinking so rapidly, et cetera, et cetera. But AI has actually proven to be kind of a boom for PR and comms generally, I think, because there's so much slop out there. And to your point about these really heavy titles that people are paying a ton of money for: head of content, head of comms, head of, all those areas, because they need a quality human being overseeing what the machines are
here's my
putting out.
question. Is it they need one quality human being, and so like all of the junior roles are going to go away? Because that's what I feel
That's
like
the whole
is happening.
that's a different topic, and it's a big.
It's like they're making this one super comms role where they're paying a lot and they want the best of the best, but like that person and AI at the expense of the rest of the.
Yeah, it's not going to work though, because think about the most senior role. You were in back-to-back
100%.
meetings nonstop. Even if you had AI, when are you prompting AI, spitting that out, reviewing it, fact check? I understand. I actually, and one thing, I use AI often because as a one-person band, I literally am need to quickly create something, need to pull something. I will use it. For example, I pulled together who are the media that would cover this? Half the media no longer at that outlet or cover that beat. I had to physically go, which I always do, and good PR people will always go to the website, physically look and see when was their last article, go to their LinkedIn, which isn't always up to. I'm looking at 3 different sources before I even do the outreach. Alana Samuels at Time was I am listed in one of the great media databases as a healthcare reporter. She's I literally only cover, family, this, and this. I don't cover, and I get pitched on everything because it literally just says healthcare reporter. So I think that you're still going to need folks that are going to get in there, do the work, make it happen, maybe less, but then there's going to be different roles. 10 years ago, they didn't have a social media coordinator. 2010 was 2009, Twitter came out, 2010, Pinterest came out. We didn't have social media coordinators. Now there's chief content officers. There's chief I think there's just going to be a shift in the title and the skill sets. I still think there's a huge role for PR. Tons of jobs by way of will be actual job. Shit market now, no doubt. One of my posts today, shit market. But I do think it's just going to change. And the roles that you didn't have before, you now have. And now if they're calling them storytellers versus account executives, okay, you're a storyteller. You're not
I think if you're positioned right and you're ahead of kind of or at least with the curve, then I'm hiring like crazy right now. I've been hiring up a storm. My biggest challenge is finding quality candidates, which I know is unfortunate. Praise Jesus, but the market is a little rocky out there. But if you're doing it right and you're positioned properly, I think for 2026, then it can be fantastic. All right, enough about me, Becca. It's on to the most fascinating part of our show.
Rapid fire. Are you ready for some questions? You get to erase one corporate buzzword from existence. What is it?
Unprecedented.
Good one.
Nice. Yeah. Okay.
It's just trauma from 2020.
Yes. And AI, the last 5 years is unprecedented.
In these unprecedented times.
You're about to give a presentation in front of 50,000 people. What song do you walk out on the stage to?
I live for the applause, applause, applause. Lady Gaga, I live for the applause, applause.
I get down with that. Applause, like it. I don't think anyone's chosen that before.
She's the first guest that's actually sung the song.
That's true. Yeah.
Walk the walk, sing the song.
Gold stars for you. If you had to do a TED Talk on anything but journalism, communications, PR, what would the topic be?
The importance of playing sports when you're younger. I just think it's transformative. I think it teaches you discipline, collaboration, creativity, camaraderie, and that helps you in all aspects of your life.
Dig it.
My last question before I hand it over to Perry's unhinged madness is you get to use one emoji for the rest of your life. Which emoji?
Probably the tilted, hysterically crying one, because you can't take
Wait
life
a
too
second,
seriously.
Is it crying or is it laughing? This is like a Rorschach test.
Crying, laughing. Crying, laughing. Yeah, I've made mistakes a few times, but the side, crying, laughing. Bobbing forward is
I like it.
All right, so I'm going to give the ridiculous question of the day, and I'm actually going to go to the throwback question because I'm genuinely curious, Meredith, what you would say. I think I know what your answer is going to be, and Becca, you might have a guess too, but I'm going to ask the question now. Let's see if I'm right. All right, you have to have hiccups around the clock for 6 months straight. You cannot avoid them. No matter what you do, you will be sleeping with hiccups. You will shower with hiccups. You will do workouts with hiccups, 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 hiccups. 6 months, can't get rid of them. Or to alleviate this, you have to chop off your pinky. Do you keep the 6 months of hiccups around the clock, or do you sever the pinky?
I could have never predicted that question in a million years. What a crazy. It's kind of like, do you, it's like a few seconds. I probably would do the hiccups for 6 months because, there's a lot of challenges and hard times that you're going to go through, but it's temporary and it's all about your mindset and getting through. Whereas your pinky, that's going to be forever, and it's going to hamper my ability to cook for my family, go skiing with my kids, be able to type and make a living. So I think that people are so focused on, vanity and what will people think if I'm, pinkyless with whatever else. But I think that I would endure the hiccups, figure out ways to have conversations with folks on why I have the hiccups, and kind of normalize the conversation.
We're normalizing hiccups, ladies and gentlemen.
And then kind of get through it and laugh about it afterwards.
I'm actually very shocked. I thought for sure you were going to chop your pinky off because you seem like you want to get this shit over with, like get it done. I thought you would go with the severing of the pinky. I'm relieved though, because there's no chance in a million years I would chop my pinky off or any digit ever. I would do hiccups for a year if I had to keep my digits. Becca, on the other hand, has a different take on that.
I would. Chop, chop.
You chop it? Yeah. That's a hard question because, like, the Aries firstborn daughter, born and raised in New Jersey, definitely wants to Tony Soprano chop it and move on with my life. But I feel like I've gotten so much more deep and philosophical that I'm kind of like, well, wait a second, right? Like, because I've gone through so many like ups and downs where I'm like, okay, what's the lesson? I get it now, right? Like, and I just feel like everything's kind of a test. So for me, like, I think I would want to try to barrel through the hiccups, knowing that like eventually they're gone, but the pinky's gone forever.
And just to be fair,
6 months versus a lifetime.
I said this to Becca before, but I would hate to be around someone that, like, if my wife had hiccups for 6 months, I'd be like, I think I'm moving out for several months because I cannot stand being in the midst of you. So
there's that.
Kudos to you. All right. I think that concludes the program. Thanks so much for coming on, Meredith. We had a great time. Where can people find you if they want to follow along, participate, pitch you? Where can they find you?
Absolutely. You can follow me on Meredith The Media on Substack. Catch me on LinkedIn and follow my byline on Inc. Magazine.
Let's go. All right, buddy. Thanks for coming on.
Go.